So, hello everybody. Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us for this launch of our Digital Inclusion Toolkit. My name's Sarah Lyles. I work for Leeds City Council as part of the 100% Digital Leeds team. And today we're going to be discussing the background to this project, how we developed it, and how you can get involved in continuing to grow this toolkit. Just to let you know, this session is going to be recorded, and we'll be sending out a link to the recording after it. And at the end, we're going to have a Q&A session. So please do submit your questions throughout the presentation. If you use the Q&A function, we will be looking at the chat, but any questions that go into the chat may not necessarily be spotted. So if you've got a question that you'd like to ask, then please submit it to the Q&A. So now I'm going to hand you over to Jason Tootin from Leeds City Council to talk a little bit about the background to the project.
Thank you, Sarah. Hello, everyone. As Sarah said, my name is Jason. I lead the 100% Digital Leeds team on behalf of Leeds City Council and the wider city. And I'm just going to do a few minutes on why we're here today and how we got here, essentially. So this work on the Digital Inclusion Toolkit has been funded through the local Digital C19 Challenge. This was launched in July this year to find digital data and technology projects to help local authorities in England with their COVID-19 recovery and renewal efforts. 11 local government projects have been funded to combat some of the challenges that they face as a direct result of COVID-19. And this toolkit is one of those projects. Because I think one of those challenges is digital inclusion. We have over 100 people attending this event this morning from different sectors and from all over the country. And I think that shows that we've all seen a huge increase in the importance and urgency of digital inclusion as a result of the pandemic, and that we're all facing similar challenges when trying to increase digital inclusion in our communities in an effective, meaningful, and sustainable way. So, who's worked on the toolkit and why are we doing it? Well, in the 2 years that 100% Digital Leeds have been delivering our digital inclusion programme, we've been contacted by almost 100 councils or organisations who've wanted to find out more about our work. Everything from how we got started, how we got our funding, how our tablet lending scheme works, and so on. So our bid to the Challenge Fund was to create a toolkit where we could more easily share our experiences from a 100% Digital Leeds perspective. But at the same time, Croydon Council applied to the fund with a similar idea, working with their partners. At Age UK Croydon and Tech Resort, they wanted to create a toolkit to share their combined experiences. So MHCLG looked at these two bids, they did some matchmaking, and Will from Croydon and I talked to each other, combined the best bits of both of our ideas, and all agreed that it would make sense to work on this together. So you'll be hearing from each of those partners during this webinar. And so, what is digitalinclusionkit.org? It's a toolkit, first of all, that's designed to be open and collaborative. And you'll hear about some of the design elements later as well. It starts with our experiences, but we want and we need contributions from anyone who is working in this space or who has an interest in increasing digital inclusion, whether you're from a council, a third sector organisation, private sector, health and care, or anywhere else, and wherever you are in the country. Through this website, we want you to tell us what you need. Tell us where the gaps are, but also tell us what you've done, what's worked for you, and just as importantly, what hasn't worked for you and why. Because we want this toolkit to become a national community of practice where anyone from any sector can come and find out more about all aspects of digital inclusion, ask questions, and find opportunities to collaborate. So I'm going to hand over to Will now, and he's going to tell you a bit more about what's actually in the toolkit.
Jason, hi, my name's Will Callahan, and I've got, I guess, two hats on today. I'm sitting in the Tech Resort offices in Eastbourne, and here we're a not-for-profit that offers sort of digital skills training, largely for free in our community, and we're there to sort of help and support third sector organisations and businesses the best that we can. And separately, I'm a delivery manager at the Croydon Digital Service, which is part of Croydon Council. And as Jason said, we wrote a bid and Jason wrote a bid, and we're very happily collaborating on this work, which I'll explain now. So you may have visited the site already. It's live at digitalinclusionkit.org, but we will show you, we'll give you a demo of the site shortly. But here's, to start with, a few pictures of what you can see. So you'll land on the homepage and you'll see chapters, for example, helping individuals or developing a digital inclusion program. You can look on any device that you have to hand, so it works on your desktops and laptops, but it's also been designed to be responsive and accessible, so it works on your phones and on your tablets, and you can access it, all the features, at any time on any device. There are about 35 articles right now, and we're adding more all the time. And these are from our 4 organisations, and as Jason said, they collect together the experiences that we've had. And I think in each case, you know, we're not selling these as the best experiences. They're things that have worked for us. They may or may not work for you. And I think the point of the site is that we want to know what's worked for you, and you know, it's an ongoing process of updating this advice, so that we can really share good stuff between us. We're writing about what's worked for us and hasn't, and there's quite a few things that haven't, and there's lots more articles that we've got to come. Here's the chapter list that we started with at the beginning of the project. So we racked our brains amongst our organisations. We also talked to other organisations that we work with, and we said, well, ultimately, what do we think this toolkit needs to cover? And you can see on that list, it's a sort of fairly broad spread of content, and hopefully useful to everybody on the call. We think we're about halfway through this right now. So those 30 articles have got us about halfway. We've got about another 25 articles that are being written, being produced at this point. But I think this is really the start, that you'll have ideas about where you'd like this to go, and we're very up for a conversation about that. So how does digitalinclusionkit.org work? So let's say, as Tech Resort has, you need to offer digital inclusion training, but lockdown is going on, so people can't get together as easily as they would have done. There's an article that we wrote about that. In fact, I'm sitting at the socially distanced workstation in our office right now. How do you do social distancing and training without very much kit on a low budget that works, that's reliable? Well, this article's about that. We tried lots of iterations of this setup. We're really interested in what's worked for you. Let's say another need, that you're at the start of a digital inclusion program, you need to secure funding for it, or for a new piece of work for an established program, or that you need to evaluate something you've done to make a case for further funding. Well, it so happens that Leeds has a lot of experience about that, and there's a section dedicated to setting up, evaluating, measuring the work that you're doing, with sort of suggested savings, the savings that Leeds achieved. Maybe that's something you'll be able to achieve as well. And I think Jason's going to talk about that in a bit more detail later. The point of all this is that we're setting out what we think, well, certainly what's worked for us, but what we'd really like to see, and I think it will really lift this site to another level, is that people coming in saying, okay, well, we've done that, but that didn't quite work for us. We tried this. We'd love to see comments around that, and we'll incorporate them into the body of work that we already have. Or it may well be there's something that's not quite right that we've written about. There's better advice that exists. Well, again, we want to update what we have, and we'll credit any advice that we get. Or there's something that we've just missed, something that we've overlooked. It doesn't relate to the areas that we work in, but it does to yours. We'd love to hear about that too. And it's very easy to leave a discussion on any of the chapters that we've written so far. We're also going to talk about work that's in progress, pilot projects that we're thinking about. And a good example of that, excuse me, is something that Leeds and Tech Resort and Croydon are working on. We're taking the lead on down here. Is how do you make devices and connectivity as affordable as it can be, because that is obviously a big barrier to entry for many. So as Tech Resort, we've started 2 conversations locally with our credit union and also with a local ISP. And we're working through how to get kit in people's hands for the lowest possible, good kit for the lowest possible price. There's some interesting conversations starting here. Excuse me, we're at the start of this journey. Let's see where it goes. Interestingly, within a week of us starting the conversation, East Sussex Credit Union launched a digital loans campaign. So it's now possible, wasn't possible before, for the credit union's members to take out very low interest loans to buy the kit that they really need. We're going to try and publish some more information about this because we think, you know, it may well work elsewhere. It may well be something that you've already done, in which case, you know, we'd love to write about it. As you can see, it's about learning from each other. It's about sharing best practice, and it's about avoiding pitfalls that, you know, we've had pitfalls in our work. We want to put that out there and make sure that you don't fall into them too. There's a really good phrase that we use. This is actually from another collaborative project that I'm on, but more recently we've started using it here. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that's very much how our 4 partners see this work. We're pooling our resources. We'll get further as a group. And with that in mind, the more people and organisations involved, the better this site will be. So please do pitch in. And now I'm going to hand over to Dave, my colleague Dave, and he's going to show you what we've built. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Will. Hi, everybody. My name's David Hampton, and I'm Interaction Designer at Croydon Council. I was brought into the Toolkit project as both the designer and the developer. And today I'm going to talk very briefly about some design work and also give you a demo of the Toolkit with some help from some of my other teammates as well. So let's get into some of the design work briefly. So the Toolkit project was a very rapid turnaround for this first iteration, just 12 weeks. So one of the challenges as a designer is creating an identity for the Toolkit quite quickly. So what I wanted to show you on this slide is some of the steps I took to achieve that identity. And what we've got here is I set about creating a nice accessible color palette. Top left here, we have the logo mark and icon that has been sort of slightly developed during the course of the project. And the other thing I did, bottom left, is set about finding a nice, accessible, readable web font for the Toolkit. So that's a bit about identity. And next, I'll just briefly show you a little bit on the UX design. So as with any project, as a UX designer, I start off by creating handmade wireframes and sketches of the interfaces. And then bottom left on this page, we've got some full color prototypes, design visuals, and on the right hand side a desktop design visual. So this was the very early starting point of trying to visualize how the Toolkit will actually look, the look and feel and the interfaces. Okay, so that's a little bit on design. So next, let's get stuck into the demo. So drum roll for the big reveal. And this is the homepage of the Toolkit. As Will mentioned, the Toolkit is now live, so please go ahead and visit digitalinclusionkit.org and start having a look around the Toolkit. Before I start showing you around, just a couple more notes on the development side of things. So as Will mentioned, the site has been accessibility tested and it actually passes AAA on all of the page templates at the moment. We've got a few small lower level issues that we're going to iron out with the accessibility. And finally, before I start giving a tour around the website, I just wanted to mention that another bonus objective, if you like, of the project would be that it could be an open source project. And that means that the platform that we've created could potentially be shared with other people should they want to pick it up and build on it or create their own version of the platform. There's still some work to do getting it ready to be shareable, but I've actually written a page on the Toolkit here. If you come in and search open source, if you're interested in this aspect of the project, you can come in here and please send us a message and get involved with that side of the project. Okay, so let's get back to the product. So I'll give you a very brief show around the toolkit. So this is the homepage, and we thought we'd lead with this very clear proposition for the toolkit, and then we go straight into search. So this would be a scenario that, say you were from a council, just for example, and you knew already you wanted to look for, say, tablet lending schemes. You can come in and do a search, and those results will return. By default, the search on the platform's built on WordPress. The search isn't great, so we've actually made quite a lot of efforts to improve the results that are returned on the search page. And next on the homepage, we've got this kind of browse by category format. So the category structure we've got in this first iteration is very simple. It's just a set of top level categories. And then the content editors can actually add an unlimited number of chapters within each category. So let's move into actually showing you like a route in through a category. So let's say we want to look at, we've come onto the homepage, we've skim read the categories, and we want to look at delivering a digital inclusion program. Each category has a nice landing page that contains all of the chapters within the category. And you can see here that the chapters are by different contributors. So on the toolkit, we have a number of different contributors, as mentioned previously, and each contributor actually has their own page, and you can view a list of chapters by that contributor. So now let's get into actually looking at the chapter page, how we're presenting our content. So I'll show you the chapter page. Now, the big challenge on this page, this is probably the interface we gave the most attention to. And the reason for that is we're trying to present potentially a lot of text on one page. And we want to make it easy for the user to kind of skim, read sections and navigate around this page. So some of the nice features we've introduced are, if you look on the left-hand side, we've got this sticky contents menu, which actually highlights your position, scroll position. You can also click to navigate around sections using that sticky menu. A lovely feature for the editors is that every section they add within their page content actually automatically appears in this content section, and they can also reorder them. So it's really nice and easy for contributors to actually upload their content. The next feature I just wanted to briefly show is this read and discussion in a tab format. Now, this was quite heavily inspired by Wikipedia. In our research phase, we found we really liked how Wikipedia gives discussion its own place to live. As with so many sites, the comments or discussion is hidden below not hidden, but sort of buried beneath the article content. So what we've done is given discussion its own home, so you can easily jump between read and discussion. And so this is the area where we really want you to come in, join in an existing discussion or start off a new discussion on one of the chapters that you're interested in or may want to contribute to. Okay, and now we're going to talk a little bit more about some actual real content examples. So I'm going to bring in some of my colleagues to talk about those. And the first one is Jason from Leeds City Council, and he's going to be talking about this page. Jason.
Thanks, Dave. Brilliant work. I think this...
Oh, sorry, Jason.
It's all right.
There you go.
I was giving you the compliment to give you the time to move to the other tab, Dave. But it is absolutely brilliant work. I think this page is a really good example of what we want the toolkit to be and to do. So it's not about replacing all of our existing web presences that we've got. 100% Digital Leads has got a website. We're not taking that down and putting it all here. But what this toolkit gives us is the chance to have more of a conversation and to talk about the behind the scenes stuff, in a sense. So when we talk about evaluating and measuring the impact of the work that we do, the actual impact, that will still go on our 100% Digital Leads website. There's positive benefits of the work that we've done. But behind the scenes, there's a whole bunch of stuff that we have done that we wouldn't talk about on our website, and this toolkit is the place for that. So this particular article references reports that we sent to council scrutiny boards a year or more ago, and gets heavily into the detail of how our evaluation and measurement framework of 100% digital leads can give us the return on investment that we're looking for, can give us the case studies, can give us the statistics. All of that evaluation, we know what we're doing, and we know how we're doing it and why we're doing it from 100% digital leads perspective. But our website is giving you the results of that rather than the behind the scenes stuff. So this toolkit is absolutely complementary to all of our existing web presences. We're not replicating, duplicating, or replacing any of those other websites. But I think this page is a really good example that it gives us space to get into some of the nuts and bolts of stuff. And then, because as Dave said, the discussion tab is right next to the read tab at the top of the page, you can read this and you can ask questions directly on it. And that will come through to the team, and you can share your experiences as well. So yeah, thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Jason. Okay, so next up, we're going to have Jill from Age UK Croydon, and talking about a bit more of a personal story content type. Over to you, Jill. Jill, we can't hear you at the moment. Okay, to keep things moving, I'm going to pass to Will first, and Will is going to talk about some more sort of like a practical content type.
Hi, Dave. Thank you. So I'm going to talk about some sort of happy accident at Tech Resort, really. So we have a big group of volunteers. I'm sitting next to one of them now, and he's let me into the office today. So thanks, Sean. They frequently amaze us with the work that they do. A lot of it is undirected. They have a good idea, they go and get on with it. And maybe appropriately for the time of year, they're called elves. And our group of elves delivered a really good present to us. If you scroll down, Dave, they said, "Oh, we've made some videos of how you get set up on Windows 10 and how you install programs and keyboard shortcuts and all these sorts of things." And the idea was that they were all going to go on our website, and they are on our website. But I figured, well, actually, if we've got this material already and it's really useful, then why don't we publish it here? I think the aim of the site isn't to of Digital Inclusion Kit isn't to fill it up with lots and lots of how-to videos, because the tech world moves on so fast, it's very difficult to keep up. I think the point of this stuff is it needs to be comprehensive, accurate, up to date. But we do have material that we can share. And I think if you do too, please do share it. I think there are areas of the work that we all do, the very basics, getting people started, that it is a good idea to have videos for. So we're going to keep plugging away with this and adding more. If you've got them, please join in. Thanks, Dave.
You're welcome. Okay, let's give Jill another try. Hopefully, here's Jill. I can see she's come in. So Jill, if you'd like to talk about the case story.
Yeah, so with all things technical, it's always good to get started. Thanks, Dave. So I'm Jill Kine, I'm CEO here at Age UK Croydon. And the reason we joined this project was actually, probably like many of you here, we were really struck right at the beginning of the pandemic with the number of our clients that we needed to get online. And we faced all the challenges that we all know about, from people who have absolutely no connectivity, no smartphone, through to people who are pretty technically savvy but never went shopping online and suddenly needed to go and do all their supermarket shopping and didn't know how to do it. So we started working with Croydon Council, got into this work because we were so keen to start understanding how to do it with our clients. And then also to test out. So we've been taking a lot of the ideas and testing them out amongst our client group. We're currently working on the pilot that Will mentioned about connectivity and cheap connectivity. How do we get people who really are living in some of the most deprived areas of our borough online and connected? So one of the things we're doing is we are sharing case stories, and here's a great example of one. And the reason we're doing it is actually to try and sort of underline the points that are being made in the bigger articles. So we're not planning to put lots and lots of case stories on there with lots of good news and lots of nice, good heart-wrenching articles. It's all about trying to define the lesson that we learned. And this was one we learned quite early on during the pandemic. We operate memory tree cafes for people experiencing diagnosis of dementia and their carers. And we were very uncertain that that would work for them online. But as it had all closed down, we decided to give it a go. And we had this individual, Mr. R, who was attending our physical cafes, but found them very difficult. He had a long journey in, and when he got there, he found it very difficult to engage. So we were very unsure he'd really engage in this laptop version. But actually, it's been transformational, both for him and his wife. He now comes along to the Memory Tree Cafe, he engages in online, and he's having such a good experience. He's moved from being non-verbal to verbal. He's joined a men's exercise class. His wife socializes with us through the same media and has joined some of our other groups. So having gone in there with a bias, we acknowledge it, about how we expected people to engage with us, the things that we've been able to do on digital inclusion have been really transformational for many of our clients. And so we will be sharing some of those stories, but continuing to test it. And what we would love to hear about from everybody is more of those ideas that people have, and particularly where we think we aren't able to do something, or it's just too difficult. We'd love to hear about how people have dealt with those problems and overcome them, because we still are finding quite a few problems and still have some difficulty. And much as Will said, we will also share things that haven't gone well. So, you know, for me at the moment, one of those is a big pile of donated laptops that I thought would be a great idea, but actually are pretty useless. And I'm now faced with the task of trying to sort out a large room full of donated laptops that we're not really sure what to do with. So yeah, please join in. We're learning so much from this. We'd love to learn from all of you. And you'll be able to read some of our case stories, but also some of the things we've done on the toolkit. And thanks very much, Dave, for making it all come to life. Over to you.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Jill. Okay, so that's the end of the demo. So I'm now going to hand back to Sarah from Leeds City Council to take over. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Dave. That was great. As we've mentioned already, but it's really important to stress that the success of this project directly hinges on getting good contributions from other people who are also involved in digital inclusion. What we're striving to do here is not just create a resource, but to build a community. So our vision for digitalinclusionkit.org is to develop an active and engaged community around digital inclusion. We know for a fact that there's many different groups tackling digital inclusion at all different levels across the country. This is both a resource for you to use in delivering that digital inclusion, but also for you to add to. We would love you to join in the conversation. Every page on the website has its own discussion tab for you to add comments to. You can ask questions, offer advice here, and just generally join in the conversation. And we'd love you to contribute your content. If you have experiences of working on digital inclusion, we'd really want to hear about it. This could be anything from skills training, providing devices, or working with specific audiences. All of the content that we've currently got on the toolkit is based on our project partners' experiences. We know for a fact that there are still gaps in this understanding. Some of them we know about. For example, none of us have particularly strong experience of working in rural areas, and we know that's a big a key area to address that we'd really love to get some input in. But I'm sure there's also gaps in the content that we've got already that we're not aware of, simply because it hasn't come up in the work that we've been doing. And it's really important to us that other people can contribute and tell us where that information's missing. We'd also love you to help us research what works and what doesn't in terms of the toolkit. We're continually testing our design formats, our article content, and the site technology. And if you'd like to get involved in that user testing process, again, please do get in touch. There is a contact form on the website at digitalinclusionkit.org. You can share your feedback and ideas for the toolkit, use it to get in touch if you've got contribution ideas, and you can also sign up for updates here if you'd like to receive updates on where the project's headed. So we're just going to quickly hear from Matt from MHCLG. Hi, Matt, you there?
Hi, yeah, thanks a lot, Sarah. Hi, my name is Matt Woodhill. I work as a collaboration manager at the Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government. And I work in a team called the Local Digital Collaboration Unit. So a little bit more on that in a moment. As Jason said early on, we started this, we launched this C19 funding challenge to give up to £800,000 of funding in total to councils to support COVID response, particularly around local services. And we had 123 applications. So it's just, amongst other things, it's incredible to find there two that were similar, had really great ambitions and that have worked together so effectively and kind of united forces, I suppose. And I think what also we learned through that is that there are lots of people with the same ideas trying to solve the same problems, and in some cases doing this independently. So really the purpose of the team that I work for is to be a bit of an enabler to support different councils and other agencies to come together. And we do this in three main ways. One's through funding projects, as this is a fantastic example of. Another is by supporting training and capability among local government staff specifically. And then the third thing is ourselves sharing the outputs of this work and supporting others to share things. Now, I'm just going to take you on a smaller segue to talk about something called the Local Digital Declaration. And I'm just putting the link into the chat at the moment, because really this is where what a lot of us are working on started. The Local Digital Declaration was put together by 45 different local agencies, so councils. Oh, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Sarah. So councils, central government departments and other public agencies to articulate a vision for the future of local services. If you just scroll down, Sarah, there are 5 key principles that underpin the declaration. They're around quite specific things. So designing things around user needs, making sure that things systems integrate, data integrates with one another, making sure that things are secure and accessible, having the right digital leadership in places, and having an open culture that shares our work and that understands collaboration as a really vital enabler to moving forwards. I guess the important thing I want to emphasize is that this was a bottom-up thing. This existed before our team came into being, and we worked to support that. And equally, this project has come through this bottom-up process and with this bottom-up ethos as well. We just put an open call out when we launched the fund in the summer for ideas in a few areas, and this one came through the community engagement theme, seeing a real need to do a bit more to support to collectively to support and address digital exclusion issues. As you'll see, if you're looking not necessarily at the screen Sarah's sharing, but at the very first ambition, when we talk about user needs, typically in this kind of digital community that we help to bring together, we're talking about things like being able to do what you need to do online without having to go into the council offices, without having to pick up the phone, having good and effective digital services that enable you to do that. But really, obviously, what we've seen over the last 6 months or more is that that's great if you're the kind of savvy enough person to do these things online. But if you're not, then what? And that's, I think, really the kind of call to action that came through from those project applications that people really need now to be able to access things remotely. It's not just a case of we're working around the fringes of things. This needs to be front and center of everyone's digital efforts and everyone's inclusion efforts. So yeah, we're really proud of what this project has achieved in such a short space of time. As I think Dave said at the beginning, it's been 12 weeks to reach this stage, which has been a colossal effort from everyone that's been involved. We're really excited to see how it continues, but just the last message I guess I'll leave you with is, while we've been working on this for 3 months, this has actually day one today. This is where it all really starts, and I hope that many of you that are on the call today will come along on the journey with us, and let's see where it goes. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Matt. That was great. Okay, so for the rest of the session, we're just going to be picking up some of the questions that you've been submitting. I've been trying to keep an eye on the chat and post some of these into the question and answer, but if I've missed any, I'm very sorry. But we'll see how many we get through now. So this first one, can you recommend any strategies, resources, etc., to support the hearts and minds process of engaging with tricky to reach groups? Any case studies would be amazing too. And Jason, I think you had something to add to this.
Yes, thanks, Sarah. I was just going to give a plug for our Digital Champions training and network, because essentially that is what that is. The hearts and minds is one of the most difficult challenges, I think, to most difficult barriers to break down. We can get devices to people relatively easily in some cases, whether that's refurbished, whether that's lending schemes, whatever it might be. But convincing people of the benefits of being online and motivating them to actually want to learn and to get online and to do some of the things that Matt was talking about, that's a real challenge. And so from 100% Digital Leads perspective, we train digital champions across the city. We've got over 2,000, and they are positive advocates for the benefits of digital inclusion and being online. And most importantly, from our perspective, in almost every case, they have a trusted relationship with the person that we're trying to persuade to be more digitally included. So they might be a peer support group, they might be someone who is exactly like that person, or they might be working or volunteering within an organisation that's already supporting that person in some other aspect of their life. So hearts and minds is a huge challenge, but we have a strategy that works for us, and we certainly started to write about that on the toolkit, but would be really keen to hear about others' experiences too.
Could I say something about that as well? So from Tech Resort's point of view, we do help individuals, but we tend to help most of the people we see run small businesses or their third sector groups. And I think it's a very similar approach. What we've tended to find is, rather than go with a syllabus or go with a curriculum, it's about sort of building up trust to begin with, and then working out what's the single need, what's the biggest need somebody really needs to solve, and can we do that in a down-to-earth, practical, and mostly non-techie way? You know, how do we get to that, and how do we deliver something quickly? Because I think one of two things happens then. It's either they're sorted and they're up and running immediately, and we see that a lot. Very small interventions make massive differences. Or they know that they can come back and ask another question, and our doors are always open for that. We haven't written a lot about this on the toolkit yet, but we will. And I think it's what's the key that unlocks somebody's relationship with this, and it's trying to find that. We'll write more about it.
Thank you. And I've got a question for Jill here. So are there any other UK projects around the country like the one in Croydon? Would you be able to tell us a bit about that, please?
Yeah, so Age UK Croydon is part of the much bigger Age UK network. And Age UK nationally is, I'm hoping, on this webinar, because we are trying to actually link this now to all the other Age UK so that we can start posting all our shared knowledge and experience. There'll be lots of different programs like this going on in different places. And for those of you in councils who aren't already well connected with your local Age UK, reach out to them, because I'm sure they're doing some digital inclusion work. In particular, you know, in Leeds, I know that Age UK Leeds has been really well connected in the digital champions work and everything else that's been going on in Leeds. And linking on to that last point about hearts and minds and how we do this, I think one of the things we found was that whilst we always knew digital inclusion was an issue for older people, it wasn't a priority for them, and therefore it wasn't a priority for us. The pandemic completely changed that, turned that round, and we found that our teams are very person-centered and help them to solve problems on their own. And so we used a lot actually of the work that Jason had published and talked to us about digital champions and how to talk to them to actually engage them in the things that they realised they needed now to do. So they realised they had that need, and they were looking to us to help them get there. So actually, in a lot of cases, you may go into something thinking there is a barrier, and something will change it. And in our case, it was obviously an external force that changed that barrier very significantly and allowed an awful lot of people to come to us and ask for help. Delivering that help hasn't always been easy, but yeah.
Thank you, Jill. Dave, I think this is a question for you, if you're there. Could you talk a bit more about the WordPress site? I wasn't sure what child theme means in particular. And then another quick one. So what's the name of the friendly font that you're using for the website?
Cool. Okay, so the second question, the friendly font is a Google font, and it's called, I don't know how you say it actually, Kumbh. It's Kumbh Sans. Yeah, so that was that's the font we chose. And okay, so a little bit about the theme. So we built the platform on WordPress, and it uses an open source free theme to start with. Now, a child theme is essentially a way of customizing an existing theme in a way. It's just the best practice way to customize a WordPress theme so that your changes don't get overwritten. Now, the great thing about our WordPress child theme is that you can actually re-theme it very easily. So you can set a bunch of color variables, fonts, and you can essentially change the identity of the theme very quickly. I hope that helps.
We ought to do a video on that, Dave.
Yeah,
that we can do. Like I said before, just if you go onto the toolkit and search for open source, there's a lot of information on the page that I've written there. So yeah, please, if you're interested in that side of it, please go ahead and have a good read of that.
Thanks, Dave. So how would you go about requesting new areas for people's input? Specifically, we're looking at refurbishing laptops. Jason, I think you flagged this one.
Thanks, Sarah. I think there were a couple that I flagged, partly to sort of group them together to say, I think there was a question around digital inclusion for children and young people as well on there that I flagged.
Yeah, I can read that one out as well if you like. What have you been doing around supporting children and young people to access device and internet, supporting learning with a drive to raising attainment? Thanks.
And the reason that I flagged those two is because it's kind of the same answer, which is there isn't really anything on the toolkit about those things yet. So from a 100% digital leads perspective, our focus has always been adults. Obviously, there are families within that. So children and young people benefit if we digitally include the whole family. But children and young people haven't been the focus of our work. I don't want to speak for Jill, but I'm guessing they're not the focus of Age UK Croydon's work. And similarly, Will's already talked about Tech Resort and their work with small businesses and things. So in terms of the partners that have come together, children, young people really hasn't been a main focus. But from a Leeds perspective, we do know the work that colleagues within the city are doing. So there's a recycling scheme run by Digital Access West Yorkshire that takes laptops and tablets and phones, repurposes them, and their focus is children, young people that are missing out on education. So we've got contacts within the city that we're hoping will write content for us because they're much better placed in that space to talk about digital inclusion for children and young people, or the recycling and refurbishment schemes that are running. So even where 100% digital leads isn't doing the stuff and isn't therefore best placed to write the content, we're absolutely keen to reach out to people that are doing the stuff and can write that content. And that's exactly what we want to do with this toolkit and build it from the ground up.
So to pick up on those 2 points, the one about refurbishing laptops, this is something that Tech Resort's really interested in. We've been inundated with requests for laptops over lockdown. We loaned out our own. We've got 20 laptops of our own. They're loaned out. We've borrowed more. We're trying to get our hands on more. It seems there's sort of an infinite need for them. So we've got a pilot project not written about yet, but I think it'll be coming next week to the toolkit around how do you get more out of the kit that you get given. So Jill, you might be interested in this actually. So some of the laptops will run Windows either current, Windows 10 or earlier, and they're serviceable, and it's an environment that people can work with or they know well. That's okay, but it's not a big percentage of those. Some of them really won't do that. They're old. They're not able to run those kind of things. So we're looking at other operating systems. So I think there's a Linux operating system that will allow some of these older laptops to start up. But I think the question is, what's the environment like, and are they actually useful to people? So we've got a batch of laptops in a local school that we've got a good relationship with. They're trying them now. We'll write about the results of those. We're also trying, as an aside, we're looking at Chromebooks as an option, and I think that's been certainly talked about in some of the articles. We think, certainly for school-based work, the school we're working with uses Google Classroom, so that's okay, and some Google Suite stuff. It doesn't give you sort of fully featured, sort of Windows experience, but it's okay. So we think there are options there, and we'd be really interested to see what other people have done, because I think we can get more life out of the machines that we have, for sure. And then just a short point about sort of safety advice for children. I've got 2 kids of my own, 9 and 13. So I'm in the thick of this right now, and reading a lot of articles from the NSPCC and others. There's a lot of good advice out there. I think we do a guide or two on the toolkit, and if anyone wants to get involved with that, please do. I mean, my personal view is it's a total minefield, and we really need to do more, do better with it. So if anyone's up for that, please get in touch.
And thanks. Yeah, well, just to add to that, I think one of the interesting things we've learned as a small charity is that in doing all this work, all these ideas about we've got some of those laptops that got that operating system you just mentioned on them, but they haven't got cameras. I and my team have no idea what that is and how it works. So one of the big lessons for us has been that actually engaging in this project has given us a link to people who know what this stuff is and can explain it to us in words of one syllable, so we don't have to go and find somebody. And we've also engaged locally in Croydon with somebody who, again, runs another not-for-profit really aiming at improving people's digital skills. And so anybody looking at this, I'd recommend looking at this website, but also making some of those personal connections. And so maybe, again, engaging in this project gives you the opportunity to do that, because as small organisations with no IT function and people for whom it's not a skill, it can be very tricky sometimes to deal with some of these things, because you will get things donated to you by very well-meaning organisations say, this is great, Jill, this will work for you, it's got Linux in it, and you go, I have no idea what does that mean?
Exactly.
How do I even turn it on? So yeah, it's great.
Thank you. And Jill, just to carry on from that sort of topic of helping people get online, have you helped people to get online onto Zoom, etc., without having face-to-face interaction? Could you talk a bit about that, please?
Good question. So it's been challenging, but our primary source is actually through our services. So we have trained our team to do it, and we have face-to-face visiting. We've had it going on all the way through the pandemic, and have been increasing slowly. It is vital essential visits. We're going into older people's homes. We've got an awful lot of considerations. But one of the things we're doing is using our service team in their people face-to-face interactions to do it. So that's the first. The second is often to engage with a carer or other support. So there are other people often in the household or engaging with that person who can help. Grandchildren, children of our age. So you can find it. And then there are also, as I mentioned, there's this other organisation we have, Clear Community Web in Croydon, who do some online training. And so if we can somehow hook them up to that first piece, then we can start teaching them, because they've got a very good and sensible way of helping people remotely. But it is challenging. And the final element we're delivering at the moment is with new, what we call tech befrienders. They're a little bit like the digital champions, although they're people that are coming to us from organisations like eBay and volunteering with us. And we're training them up, and we will also be taking them through processes that allow them to go and visit people. And I've also referenced Good Gym here. We don't do a lot of work with Good Gym at the moment in Croydon, though we want to. That's another organisation that does actually go through processes to allow people to go into people's homes to do it. So there are organisations that have gone through COVID safe processes to get people into people's homes. But obviously, as an organisation yourself, you'd have to risk assess both the person you're going to work with and also the person you're sending in before you do that. So we do an awful lot of COVID safe risk assessment for every visit involved in getting people online.
Thank you. So how closely have you worked with the library services in Leeds and Croydon? I think both Jason and Will might have something to say about this one.
I'll happily start. Thanks, Sarah, and then hand over to Will. So from a Leeds perspective, 100% Digital Leeds is part of the library service within the council in terms of that structure. We have a city remit and we work across the council and across sectors. So we work with third sector, health and care, private sector, so on. But yeah, absolutely, in terms of a council structure, we're on the library service structure. I am conscious that library services in different parts of the country are structured and operate very differently. So in Leeds, the library service is part of the council. In other places, they might be mutual trusts, they might be mainly run by volunteers, so on and so forth. So whilst being conscious that it is different in different places, in Leeds, the library service is really strong in terms of its digital offer. So we are currently training all of the library staff and customer access staff, because we have shared buildings in some cases, training them to be digital champions. There's a well-developed digital support and skills program, which has been, during lockdown, been happening over the phone and online. Claire on my team, I think, is on this call, who's managed a lot of that work. And then we have digital engagement sessions. So back to Will's point about finding the things that motivate someone, finding the hook. It may be that we can hook in digitally excluded adults by offering creative digital activities to the children, who will then bring along their parents when we can do that face to face, obviously. So library service, absolutely, yes. And apart from anything else, they have, in Leeds, we have 30 plus buildings, all of which have free Wi-Fi. And across all of those sites, I think we have something like 700 public access computers free to use for people to get online. So there's infrastructure, there's staffing support, and there's spaces. So libraries, absolutely, from a Leeds perspective, yes.
So I can tell you about Croydon and also the sort of East Sussex, Eastbourne angle as well. So in Croydon, I'm part of a team called the Croydon Digital Service. So we're not in the library service. We are two separate parts of the council, but we work very closely together. So there's a case study on the toolkit right now about some work that I don't know whether you were involved with it as well, Jill, but it was sessions that we ran pre-lockdown, lots of them, for really sort of all comers drop into Croydon's libraries. That started slow because I think it was, it's pre-COVID. It's sort of people really like wondering whether they actually need this stuff. And sadly, some of the libraries have had to be closed during lockdown, just as they were sort of picking up. It's when you need this stuff most, you're not necessarily able to run it, which is a real shame. But
Exactly.
sort of to answer your question around the relationship, it's very strong. Did you have something to add there, Jill?
I was just going to say, no, we've been trying to do a few more of those through that, again, using Casper's team, but it has been very tricky.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to align all the different risk assessments and protocols to make it work for people.
Yeah.
And indeed, for many of the people who need it, they really don't want to come out and come into those public spaces either. So it's not just about us actually being able to provide it. That's why so much of our work is actually in people's homes still. But I hope we'll be back out in libraries soon.
Yeah, I think we found that Tech Resort in East Sussex, the library service is run by the County Council, East Sussex County Council, and we're very good. We've got a really good relationship with them. We see, from our work with Jason and Leeds, I think, and our work with East Sussex, libraries have a huge part to play. Maybe they're at the forefront of this work. We think Jason's team's amazing. I hope that's okay to say, Jason. And our colleagues in East Sussex in the library service they're just awesome, really. Whatever they can do, the extra mile, they basically go. So we started sessions in Eastbourne's library, but the library folks saw what we were doing there. They said, well, can we run this in some of the other East Sussex libraries? So we've done drop-in sessions in in Hastings. Can't remember them all. Lewis, I think we did some, but they have their own. We've trained the trainer. You know, they've got their own skills now that they can go out and do this stuff for themselves. And I hope that that's the relationship that continues for the long term, because I think a lot of this is, you know, it's really important. We want to do more of it.
Thank you. So there's a question here. How do you measure the success of this project? Did you have a baseline of digitally excluded people you wanted to reach out to? I'm not quite sure if this is referring to the Toolkit project or digital inclusion projects in general, but we could probably speak a little bit to both of those, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm happy to start on that one, Sarah. I'm sure we'll have a Croydon perspective. I think, yes, whatever digital inclusion project or program you're starting on, it's always a good idea to know who you're starting with, essentially, and the scale of your ambition. I think there was another question around, you know, if you've got £10,000 to do something over 3 months, kind of where do you start? And there is some stuff already from a Croydon and a Leeds perspective on the toolkit about that kind of baseline mapping, understanding who is more likely to be digitally excluded, what kinds of people are we talking about, and where are those kinds of people in your place, essentially. Beyond that, there will be different, depending again on where the funding comes from, perhaps, but there may be different requirements in terms of, do you need to do breadth? Do you need to get lots of people engaged? Or do you need to do depth? Have you identified a specific group? And there may not be many of them, but the difference and the impact you can make if you digitally include them might be massive. So from 100% Digital Leads perspective, we try and do both. But some of that depth examples would be we're working with gypsy traveller communities in Leeds. You know, their life expectancy is 50, average life expectancy of that group. If we can make them more digitally included, particularly from a health and care perspective, there are massive benefits, but it's not a huge community in terms of numbers. Similarly, or kind of the opposite, if you like, we're doing a piece of work in South Leeds with the local care partnership that's taking a sort of population health management approach, where we're looking at the whole of the area and then working with the LCP to look at health inequalities, poverty, some of the other indicators that kind of sit behind digital inclusion in a lot of cases. And that will give us, that will bring numbers in a sense. So I think it's a long way of saying it depends, really. From this toolkit, there were no numbers attached to it. You know, we might have had 10 people booked on this webinar for all we knew. We're grateful that we haven't, but, you know, Will's already spoken and can speak more about phase 2 in a sense. The success will depend on the interest and the interaction that we get from it.
There are some measures that we're looking at right now, you know, starting today. So Google Analytics will give us sort of site traffic numbers, and you know, search keywords. You know, what are people searching for, and we're delivering against those. We have Hotjar installed. If you accept that in your cookies, we can start getting, it won't track you individually, but we'll get heat maps for the pages. We can see what people are clicking on and not, so it's all anonymous. I think to each of our organizations, selfishly, what are we getting out of it? So thinking about Croydon, you know, we've done a lot of digital inclusion work, but there's so much more that we need to do. So is our involvement giving us the answers and the kind of evidence and the scope that we need to move forward? Already it has. So that's great. I think thinking about something that you said, Jason and Sarah, about the number of requests you get from other councils and other organisations for the advice that you have. And I think if this site becomes the repository of, you know, how do you do a digital inclusion programme type advice, and that you can point people to this and it will grow that body of knowledge, I'd say that's a win for, you know, for Leeds, for us, for everybody. I think from Tech Resorts' point of view, I think it's about sort of trying to sort of broaden the work that we do out from. So what we used to do a lot of is coding and making clubs for kids. That's where we started 7 years ago. And we've done a digital inclusion work in the past, a lot of it in Eastbourne, but this has really given us you know, there's a new need here that needs to be satisfied, and there's no one around here apart from us in the library service that are really doing anything about it. So if we can put laptops in people's hands and give them connectivity where they didn't have any before, I think that's something that we're going to be looking at very keenly. So it's sort of, I think it's 3 measures really. So it's what can we get on the site? What are we doing in our own sort of daily operations? You know, are we getting the word out? Are we getting more engagement around it? Are people contributing to the toolkit? But ultimately, what are we doing on the ground? Are we helping people more than we were before? And Leeds articles about evaluation, I think, are really key here. So I think there's sort of 3 measures. Should have prepped that bit better, but yeah, that's what it feels like we're looking at.
Thank you very much, Will. And I think that's probably a good question to end on here, as I'm very aware that we're actually running over time now. We haven't even got through half of the questions you've asked. So thank you very much for all the engagement. It's been wonderful. We have recorded the session, so we'll be sending out a link to it. And we might hopefully be able to address some of the unanswered questions that we've still got as well. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us this morning. I hope this has been useful to you, and I hope you'll go and check out the toolkit, make use of it, and let us know what you think. So thank you very much and have a good afternoon. Bye.